Welcome to the Never Too Early Fantasy Football Podcast, where it is never too early for fantasy football. My name is Jeff.
And I'm Alex.
As always, thank you for downloading, listening, liking, and commenting on our podcast videos. Please join our community by subscribing to us on the socials. Our handle on all platforms is at N2E Fantasy. We are also available on all major podcasting apps by searching N2E Fantasy. Alex, what do we have on today's show?
On this episode of the Never Too Early Fantasy Football Podcast, we are providing a condensed recap of Week 17 action and previewing Week 18 action, cycling through who's going to be resting starters, who's not, and then making our picks with that knowledge going forward. Jeffrey, we have a Christmas doubleheader to go over. So let's start with the Chiefs at the Steelers. What were your takeaways from this matchup?
So, in these two Christmas Day matchups, it feels like one team showed up for both of the matchups and they weren't the home team. So, I don't know if the road teams went in there very angry, but the Chiefs won this matchup 29-10, and they're not like stellar on offense. So, but Mahomes did look great in his season finale. We'll get to that a little bit later, but it does look like the Chiefs will be resting starters in Week 18. And then Travis Kelce shows up in the fantasy championship, but a little more negative. Their backfield is a true timeshare. And we need to file this away because I believe Isaiah Pacheco may be under-drafted in 2025 because of his performance post-broken leg. So we need to keep an eye out for that because I don't believe this is a true Pacheco. And next year he might go in like round 4 or 5, and I would probably grab him in round 5 each and every time. Round 2 was way too rich for my blood going into this year. Alex, you picked Kansas City and won, and I picked Pittsburgh and lost.
Right. For me, I can't bet against the Chiefs at this point, and believe the resting starters next week. We'll talk about that later. But other than that, it's hard to pick against them. They'll probably have a three-peat. I'll decide if I want to take a break from football if that happens. I definitely want to take a break from football after watching the Texans get completely obliterated by Baltimore. We both picked Baltimore. We both were correct. The Texans literally could do nothing on offense, got their only points on defense. They're a completely broken team. They're a team that has nothing to play for this week, and yet they're still going to play their starters, apparently. After this week, I don't know what. They're an early round exit, in my opinion, unless something dramatically changes. I will say there was some nice moments from Mr. Damian Pierce on a return. Seemed like the only one that was fighting, got a nice 45-yard return and some pop. Like to see him involved more on offense in an effective manner, but can't always get what you want. Just abysmal game. I don't know how the Texans go forward from here. I think something has to change in the offseason. I think Bobby Slowick needs to get fired, potentially. They might just go the cheap route and fire the offensive line coach and replace him and try to fix it that way, but just not good enough. Meanwhile, Baltimore looked pretty great for the most part. They didn't have to do much, so they just ran the ball the entire time. That's all you need.
Absolutely, and that allowed Lamar and Derrick Henry to show up for the fantasy championship week. And yeah, I mean, we love that when our fantasy stars show up in the biggest moments for us. So hopefully a few of you out there won some fantasy championships this year. But we both picked Baltimore. We both won, as you said. And we can move on to the really cruddy Thursday night game between the Seahawks and the Bears, a snooze fest, if you will. The Seahawks do win the game 6-3, but there's not much good to say about this game. Just 3 field goals and really no fantasy stars. Very disappointing. We both picked Seattle. We both won. I don't feel great about a 6-3 win. Would have loved to see more points scored. Alex, what did you take away from that game? Anything
Well,
positive?
there was one spot where it looked like Chicago got ahead when we're gonna be up 10-6, but after like a long review, they called that play back, I think, on a penalty. So that was disappointing because Caleb Williams would have gotten a touchdown. I think it was either Odunze or Keenan Allen that caught the touchdown. That wasn't a touchdown. So it could have been more exciting of a game. It ended up being a nothing burger of a game, just 6-3. And no football fan, no fantasy owner wants that kind of game. So both these teams have a lot to improve on.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we get to a result a little bit later, the Seattle Seahawks will be not making the postseason either. And honestly, after this performance, I don't want to see them play in the postseason. So,
Something's not right in their offense. Kenneth Walker got hurt again in this. They just can't get all their guys on the same page. Geno Smith has, in my opinion, gone down for the second year or stayed as a poor performing quarterback 2 years in a row now. So they need to acquire a quarterback. And Chicago desperately needs an offensive minded head coach so that they could rehab Caleb and get Odunze flourishing as well.
yeah, I mean, there's rumors that they're going after Mike Vrabel. So I know that doesn't, you don't love that. But there's rumors about Ben Johnson out there too.
Well, the guy that's running their football operations, Kevin, whatever, wasn't
Mm-hmm.
he over Ohio State at one point?
I think so. I think that's where the
Vrabel's
Harbaugh and him
Vrabel
came
is
from.
a Ohio State alum, so he could like him for that reason, as well as his coaching experience. So
Absolutely. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what direction they take. I hear Pete Carroll's interested in head coaching jobs. Speaking of Seattle, he's in their front office right now. I heard John Gruden's name out there. So, I mean, there's a lot of names out there churning. That's why I was a little surprised that Bill Belichick took his name out of that hat so quickly. Rex Ryan with the Jets, I've heard he is going to interview. So,
I don't know if I
retreads.
want to retread. Yeah, I don't know if I want to retread at this point. I think people need
Absolutely.
to be done with Gruden. Like, that's it. It's done. He's not it.
Yeah. So speaking of changes, you proposed something in this next game to me about Drake May. And the next game is the Chargers at the Patriots. And you posed the question of, say the Titans are the number 2 pick and they trade Drake May to the Titans for the second pick, and they took Sanders and Hunter, and they even got Deion Sanders out of that too. Possibly they could get all three to New England and just completely change the culture in New England. So there's some interesting dynamics around that, but the Patriots first need to lock up the number 1 pick before we can worry about any cool, fun hypotheticals. But in this particular matchup, the Chargers did dominate the Patriots 40-7. J.K. Dobbins looked great in his return. I think he's like 58 yards away from a bonus, so we'll see if they play him at all this week. Harbaugh has not said one way or the other if he's going to play starters or not this week. And then Lad McConkey, your boy, continues to impress. I think he had 2 touchdowns in this game. So he is continuing to be a fantasy star, and it'll be interesting to see where these rookie receivers go next year, because if you remember, Marvin Harrison was a 2nd-round pick. Neighbors was probably closer to a 4th. Everyone fell later. I don't know if Brian Thomas Jr. is going to be overdrafted, Lam McConkey. I don't know what's going to happen with Harrison and Neighbors. I don't know if they're going to go up or down or stay the same. There's a lot of unknowns. Plus, you got to throw the other rookies and the free agents into that whole mess and churn it out and see where everything comes out. But we both picked the Chargers in this matchup. We both won, which makes you 4-0 on the day and me 3-1 so far. So anything that I missed on this matchup here?
I just want to say that Lad McConkey had a better year than Zay Flowers, but Zay Flowers is the one that made the Pro Bowl this year. I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's accurate. Same thing with Brian Thomas Jr. He should have been out there in the Pro Bowl over Zay Flowers. I don't like how the Pro Bowl system is. Anyway, that's just an aside. Outside of that, one thing I noticed, Ramondre Stevenson got benched quite quickly. Like, they were talking about him not starting, and then they didn't use him at all. So for those of you out there who had him and played him, you got screwed over by Gerard Mayo yet again. So I would love for them to do something crazy like get Deion Sanders and get both his boys on the team. That would be an amazing situation, amazing swing. Just go from Coach Belichick,
Coach
where it's
Prime.
just like serious, to all of a sudden Coach Prime and be like super swag and fun. And then get two high quality players. I just it I don't know that I personally would want Shador Sanders over Drake May, but if you're getting Deion Sanders, Shador Sanders, and Hunter, that might be enough to be worth it. I don't know. So
Fun to think about. Fun
yeah,
to think about. I think it would
fun.
take a lot to trade May, but we'll see. I think he
I mean,
showed
they
me
just.
something.
I like Drake May. I like Drake May
Yeah.
as a prospect more than Shador Sanders as well, but I don't know what they're thinking over there in New England. We'll see.
So the interesting thing about Stevenson is he signed a 3-year extension before the season started, so he's got 3 years left on his deal. So they need to figure out how to utilize him. That was one of the reasons why I extended him in Dynasty, was I was following the money, but I did not start him in the fantasy championship, and in that league I did pull out a victory. So feel pretty good about that, but hopefully he can come back and do something next year because I'll need him. I'm losing a few members of the roster. All right. Anything else on this matchup before we hop to one of the games of the week?
Let's hop to the next game, a playoff implication game, Jeff.
All right. So we got the Broncos at the Bengals. And this was one of the games of the week. Bengals do win in overtime 30-24. And Marvin Mims broke out in a big way. He seems like he's becoming a favorite target of Bo Nix along with Cortland Sutton. And Sutton did come through for the fantasy championship if you did start him. Same with Higgins. Higgins had a huge game. Chase had a moderately huge game, I think 100 yards and 0 touchdowns, but I think Higgins had 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. So the Bengals do get the walk-off win. They keep their playoff hopes alive. And I know 2 weeks ago when I said that the Broncos changed the schedule to try to get the leg up on this matchup, didn't work. But this matchup was very paramount because now if the Broncos lose the last week, the Dolphins and the Bengals could potentially make the playoffs instead of the Broncos. So,
Well, the Broncos took the Bengals into overtime and just lost in overtime. I think we probably both agree the Bengals offense is a better offense than what the Broncos have at the moment. But the fact that a rookie could go toe to toe with Joe Burrow and have Marvin Mims and Cortland Sutton as his best two wide receivers against Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, it's pretty impressive to me, especially when every week they rotate their starting running back and you never really know who it's going to be. This week it was Jaleel McLaughlin. So kudos to Denver. I still think Denver's going to make their way into the playoffs. Their coaching and their defense is just too good to not make it at this point. Bengals are going to be awfully close though. So when it comes to T. Higgins, I think he's had some really good weeks the last few weeks ever since he came back. This week, he had a lot of good plays, but he also had a really bad fumble and he had a really bad penalty that cost them, I think, a lead in this game earlier on. He does a lot of good things. I still don't trust him to be a number one guy. And I think a lot of his value is tied to Joe Burrow throwing him the ball. And you can cut that both ways because Joe Burrow benefits more than most quarterbacks by having two wide receivers as talented as the ones he has. But I think T. Higgins is buoyed by Joe Burrow. I think if he had a different quarterback, he may not be putting up the numbers that he is, and in a contract year as well.
yeah, I think that they're better together. I think they would be better to stay together, but I don't know if that's going to be the case. Higgins and Chase have the same agent now, so I don't know if they're a package deal. Have no idea. So we will see what happens.
I
But
would not want to be the Bengals management right now. They're so
no,
dumb.
they got themselves into the situation because Burrow has made it very clear who he wants around, and he made it very clear that he wanted both Higgins and Chase around. So I think you've made your 3 stars very unhappy, and Chase Brown was like a pleasant surprise that came along. here. So just a thought. But at this point, Alex, you are 6-0 and I am 5-1 on the week. And we can head right to Sunday action. And the Cardinals at the Rams. We both picked the Rams. The Rams did win 13-9, but another snooze fest. The only notable that came out of this is Trey McBride finally scored his very first touchdown of the campaign. And I know we had talked about it last week, how he would probably be the top tight end if he just scored like a handful of touchdowns. He's within 15 points right now of the top tight end, which is George Kittle, your boy. And yeah, that makes you 7-0 to start the week and me 6-1 to start the week. We're pretty on fire with picks right now.
Well, as the year's coming down to an end, I think it's getting easier to predict unless it's a truly 50-50 situation.
What about week 18? That's going to be so hard to predict. And I'm going to nail you to it here in a little bit.
It depends on how many teams are, benching their starters and who has something to play for. And all these teams that should be tanking for the number one pick are all of a sudden starting to get wins out in the last couple weeks. Whatever. This was a pretty close game. The Cardinals and Rams was remarkably pretty close, but Kyler Murray just, in my opinion, is not a good quarterback. 2 bad interceptions. Could have been worse. Rams didn't necessarily take a commanding lead. It's another week of Cooper Kupp being dead to me. He's just done
I didn't
nothing.
start him in any fantasy matchups this last week.
I don't know if I would touch him at all next season. I don't. It seems like they can only support one wide receiver on this offense. So
I mean, they have supported 2. I just don't know what happened to Kupp.
maybe he's super injured and just being used as a decoy. I don't know, but
Maybe they're saving him
not
for
good.
the postseason.
Maybe. In that case, they should just keep him benched and on the sidelines, or chained up in a hyperbaric chamber so that he can recover. Feeding him with the tube. I don't know, but I don't like that he's not being involved anymore, and it's kind of annoying.
Yeah, I don't really have much more to offer on this particular game. I was very disappointed in it. I thought that Stafford would outscore Goff this week, cost me a fantasy championship. So I'm disappointed too with their production. But the Rams are set to rest players in week 18, which I think bodes well for them in the first round of the playoffs because they are an older bunch, especially on offense. And I think that does help Kupp and Stafford to have that week off and hit the ground running in the playoffs because I do think they can score a lot of points. Great. So a little more embarrassing for me here. The Panthers at the Buccaneers. I did pick the Buccaneers 1, so that leaves me at 1 loss, you at 0 for the week. The Bucs destroy Carolina 48-14. And in place of Kupp in a few leagues, I started Adam Thielen, who was a sneaky fantasy play with 2 touchdowns. So that was nice. But Baker was the true story here. Threw for 5 touchdowns, 2 to Evans, 2 to McMillan, who I believe is going to be the number 2 next year. And I was higher on McMillan than you were entering the year because we did talk about our dynasty rookie rankings, and at least he was in my top 24 and he was not in your top 24. So it's nice to see they probably move off of Godwin. Godwin's still out there as a potential return during the postseason. I haven't seen too much on it, but since I gave myself flowers on this, I'm going to give you flowers on this as well. Bucky Irving is their best running back, and he is overtaking by far the number 1 spot in Tampa. But I think Rachaad White is a really good number 2. So I think Tampa is set right now with offensive pieces going into 2025.
Sean Tucker could be a number 1 or number 2 potentially on another team as well. So they got 3 really good running backs right now. And Bucky Irving got 190 yards in this matchup. So they look great. They look like they're going to claim the division this week and really be an upset risk to a lot of these NFC teams. Like they might be able to beat a team like the Eagles or the Packers or any of these other NFC teams and upset them because they've got a really good offensive side and a quality defensive side.
Yeah, when your quarterback can put up 5 touchdowns in a game, I feel like you could win any game as long as he's dialed in. So it all circles around the quarterback position as soon as we get to the playoffs. So they need to be dialed in, and we'll see which quarterbacks are and aren't in the playoffs. But you're at 0 losses and I'm at 1 loss, so like that's pretty good for picks for the week. And Cowboys and the Eagles, we both won this matchup as well. So here we sit with just 1 loss between us this week. But the Eagles destroy the Cowboys 41-7. Saquon Barkley gets 167 yards on the ground, leaving him 101 yards away from Eric Dickerson's record. But it does look like the Eagles will be resting Barkley in Week 18, so that record may not come to fruition against the Giants. But it was Devonta Smith's game with 2 receiving touchdowns. Tanner McKee looked good in relief of Kenny Pickett when Kenny Pickett got banged up in this game. And then a little bit of news from the Cowboys. Ezekiel Elliott gets released for the second time by the Cowboys. So could he help a team in the postseason, say like the Chargers, who could use a pounder? I don't know. I don't know. So we will see what comes out of it. But any takeaways from you in this matchup where Philly dominated the Cowboys?
I still like Devonta Smith a lot. I think A.J. Brown is kind of a boomer bust wide receiver for me going forward. So I wouldn't take him in the first or second round in redraft, but someone will. I think Tanner McKee, only 3 completions, but 2 of them went for touchdowns. I think he has a chance to probably start this matchup against the Giants this coming week, and we'll see what he can do with a full go as a starter for that team. We'll see how he can do. He might be trade bait. They might use Kenny Pickett as trade bait, potentially. Why not? So you can get something of value and continue to improve the rest of the roster, because there's no way they're moving on from Jalen Hurts. Cowboys, other than Rico Dowdle, the team just looks miserable. And I think they're going to have to cut bait on Brandon Cooks, who just looks old and pretty expensive out there. So they need to do something to overhaul this roster. They need to bring in a different coach. We'll see what the Cowboys can do, but I'm not optimistic for their near future.
Absolutely. But Alex, you're on fire this week. So there is that so far.
Yeah, well, with me, it's usually my afternoon games that are a little bit worse. So let's get started with the next one. We got Colts at the Giants. Colts, who are supposed to be playing for a playoff spot, decided not to show up this week, starting with Anthony Richardson not playing. Colts got blown out, despite what the scoreboard said, 45 to 33. I went with the Colts. You went with the Giants. Drew Lock looked like Joe Montana, according to Jeff's notes here. I'm sorely disappointed by the Colts' lack of effort on this. I thought their defense would have played better. They didn't. They just seemed like the entire team just gave up. Jeff, what were your takeaways on the Colts at Giants?
So I think Pierce, Pittman, Jonathan Taylor, and Malik Neighbors all showed up for this matchup. So fantasy owners that started them in the championship are going to be very happy with it. Drew Lock. Who knew he was going to be a fantasy starter this week? I should have started him over Stafford. I'd be sitting here with another title, but not to be this week. But you picked Indy. This is your first loss. I picked the Giants because the Giants can't even tank, right? So I knew that was going to happen. And now the Giants don't even sit into the number 1 spot any longer. So they are, we'll see what happens in week 18. But yeah, Brian Dable's boys put up a 45 spot. Should really help him keep his job, right, Alex?
It's such a meaningless game for them. I don't think Drew Lock is the answer. But now they're gonna have fans that want them to re-sign him, and I don't know what you did to yourselves, and now you cost yourself a higher draft position in a meaningless game. It makes no sense. I mean, you knocked the Colts out of the playoffs, but they're in a different conference, so who cares? Whatever. What a wild game. All right.
Absolutely.
Let's move on to the next matchup here, the Jets at the Buffalo Bills. We both unsurprisingly picked Buffalo. Buffalo won 40 to 14. Jeff, what were our takeaways in this one?
So, in the Did we skip a matchup? Let's see here.
Yes, we skipped the Raiders and Saints, but we can circle back to that.
We will. But the Bills do win 40-14 here. The Jets didn't show up until Tyrod Taylor took over. Aaron Rodgers took himself out of this game. And I mean, I feel bad for people that started Devonta Adams or Garrett Wilson in their fantasy championship, Brees Hall. None of them really showed up. Josh Allen had 3 touchdowns in his 3 quarters that he played. Mitchell Trubisky did finish the game for the Buffalo Bills. We expect next week that Josh Allen will keep his start streak intact and then very promptly hand the reins over to Mitchell Trubisky for the rest of the way. So this was Buffalo's last game with the starters because they cannot move out of the 2nd seed now. So they are locked. They're going to be hosting a playoff game against the 7th seed, whoever that is. And it can either be the Broncos, the Bengals, or the Dolphins. So those are the 3 teams that the Buffalo Bills could face in the wild card weekend. Alex, did you catch any of this game? It was on local TV for us.
I saw it. I thought Aaron Rodgers is doing everything he can to get cut. He did not look good. Had 2 bad picks. I know you said it wasn't a good game for Garrett Wilson, but he did have a touchdown and 66 yards, so was usable. Devonta Adams, not so much. I'm sure they can't wait to cut Alan Lazard as soon as Rodgers is off the roster, because I don't think that he'll be on the roster come 2025. Bills are just too good in that division, and they're the lone playoff team, in my opinion. We just expected the Bills to stomp all over the Jets, and they did.
Yeah, and I do think this is Buffalo's division for the next several years. I think the only potential for challenge right now comes from Drake May, but that requires him to get some talent around him. And hopefully they do it sooner rather than later because you could really ruin a quarterback if that does not happen. All right, back to the Raiders at the Saints. The Raiders win 25-10, which should make you really happy because you were very high on the Raiders entering the season. And now they're pulling off a few wins here to get them out of the top 5 of picks. So there is that. But my one takeaway from this game, because the Saints, you can't really take away much from them because I don't think Spencer Rattler is their future. So Amir Abdullah, 100 yards rushing. We know McCormick was doing well before this, but there was so many people that even you and I knew that were high on Zamir White, high on Alexander Madison. But if Amir Abdullah can do this and they can't, I mean, it just shows how bad the run game was this year for the Raiders. And they would have been better off playing McCormick and Abdullah all year over White and Madison, in my opinion. I think going into next year, you got to have a running back to pair with McCormick. And I think you give McCormick the 1B role. But we'll see what happens with the Raiders because they could have a whole new coaching change. The Saints will. We already know that because Dennis Allen's already been fired. But we both picked Vegas. Vegas won this matchup, which is surprising that we both picked them, but happy that we did. So we both have 1 loss so far, Alex. Anything that you noticed in this game?
Yeah, I think it's an issue when you have a 10-year pro running back who's been a career backup all of a sudden outperform you with Amir Abdullah. It just blows my mind that it took him 10 years to have a really good game like this, and he's already better than Alexander Madison or Zamir White. So I agree with you. That should put that to bed. I bet they draft someone. The Raiders would be a team along with the Cowboys that I would think potentially would draft a running back in the 1st round. Seems like something they would do. So I could totally see that, especially if they can't get a quarterback because the quarterback's already gone because they moved down too far for winning. But I think that this team has pieces. I think they're better than what their record is. Part of that could be coaching. Could be time to move on from Pierce because he has not improved from his first showing. He's done nothing this year. That makes me think that he should keep the job. going forward. And that's unfortunate because they did add Brock Bowers. I know Devonta Adams staged a mutiny and forced his way out, which he went to another bad situation. So good for you, Adams, for doing that. Ultimately, they had a running back. They're able to upgrade a quarterback, an offensive line, have a better coaching. This could be a team that could vault up like we saw Washington do, like we saw the Broncos do, like we saw the Chargers do, but it's just going to take the right moves. I think Aiden O'Connell is good enough to keep building around until you can find an upgrade. If you can't get one, I don't necessarily think he's the long-term answer there, but he looks like a better answer than Spencer Rattler is right now for the Saints. Rattler is a rookie. He is on a terrible team right now, so it's kind of hard to hold that against him, but he has not shown enough that I feel comfortable moving with him forward, and they might or might not be moving on from Derek Carr. So I don't know. If Derek Carr's released, he would be one of the better free agent quarterbacks this offseason, too. Might be the year of the ancient old free agent quarterbacks. So we'll see how that goes. We also saw nothing from Kendre Miller. In fact, he may or may not have gotten hurt in this game, as far as I know. Didn't show up. So we don't know what we have in the Saints other than they have a million tight ends.
Wait, did you just say Kendre Miller got hurt? I feel like that's a pattern.
I said he may or may not have because he didn't show up at all.
Back in the doghouse.
Yeah, he got a concussion. Kind of hard to hold that against him.
Absolutely. He just got out of the doghouse. He can't go back into somebody else's now.
He's not going to be in this coach. He's not going to be in their doghouse. It's just Dennis Allen was the one who was a jerk about it.
Who will be the next coach there, though? That's a good question. Watch it be John Gruden.
Yes, I was like, Gruden makes the most sense for them, I feel like.
With Carr again, because Carr wouldn't go anywhere if Gruden was there. Remember Carr was crying when Gruden got let go and was like upset about it?
It does make sense for them to do that, so we'll see.
Yup. So that'll be interesting, and we'll have to keep our eyes peeled for that. But the next matchup here, Alex, I take the lead with one loss, and you have two now. You picked Tennessee over Jacksonville. Jacksonville won 20-13. And the biggest fantasy takeaway that I had out of this is Brian Thomas Jr. with another big performance, and he is wide receiver 4 on the year. He's going to be a first-round pick in 2025, and I'm going to hate that every step of the way because I want him on my team, but I would never take a first-round pick on a Jacksonville Jaguar.
I don't think he's going to be a first round. He'll probably be a second rounder, but I don't think he'll be a first rounder.
I don't think I would waste a second rounder on him.
Yeah, either way, I mean, that would just remind me of Allen Robinson back in the day. Like, he had a really good year, then everyone drafted him in the second round, and then he sucked. So, yeah, I'm not going to make that same mistake. But everything looked like it should have gone Tennessee's way, and it was just ugly the entire time. I can't believe you got into a position where Mac Jones got you the win, but he didn't have a turnover. Mac Jones looked good. Mac Jones, to me, of late, has looked like a better quarterback than Trevor Lawrence has. That's not to be said that he's super talented or that Trevor Lawrence has been that bad, but both of them have not lived up to their first round pedigrees in general. It's nice to see Parker Washington get involved. I hope that happens more going forward. But to me, Tennessee looked like the team that was moving the ball better. Just Mason Rudolph is just not a good quarterback. Tennessee has to do something to address that position.
I trust him over CJ Stroud next week.
You should never trust someone who lost to Mac Jones.
Mac Jones is your boy.
Yeah. Watch them move on from Trevor Lawrence in the next year or two, and then.
Well, Mac Jones is a free agent after this year. Watch Houston sign him as the backup and let Mills go.
No, they won't.
Then you can enjoy Mac Jones on your team. That's too funny. Too funny. All right. So we have a few more matchups to discuss. We both picked Miami over the Browns in the next matchup. Miami did win 20-3 in a Tyler Huntley start. Very interesting that Tua cannot play right now, which just adds more to his injury concern. It does not sound like Tua will be playing this upcoming week. So now they have a playoff spot on the line, potentially. And they're on the back of Tyler Huntley, who's actually looked decent and he actually made Tyreek Hill look decent with 100 yards receiving. I think Jerry Jeudy had something ridiculous, like 18 targets in this game. So not a huge fantasy day with 18 targets, but it seems like DTR forced the ball to him. But it does seem like the
DTR threw
Browns.
the ball 47 times.
Yep.
47 times.
I think that's unacceptable in a 20-3 matchup. And I think DTR will not get the start in the season finale. The Browns have actually named a new quarterback the starter this upcoming week. Do you know who it is, Alex?
I'm sorry. It froze up for a second.
So do you know who the Browns starter will be this week, Alex?
The former Patriots quarterback?
Bailey Zappi.
Bailey Zappi.
Watch him have a great game with the talent that's around him. Watch him feed Jeudy and Moore, and I think Tillman's already on IR with the concussion issues. But Njoku could be back. I mean, if I was Njoku, I'd probably sit out this last game. But Alex, anything else that you'd like to add to the Dolphins at the Browns matchup?
No. I mean, wasn't fun to watch. Didn't add that much to my fantasy day.
No.
I hope neither of these teams make the playoffs next year either, because they're disgusting.
Well, the Dolphins have a shot this Sunday to make the playoffs if the Broncos lose and they win. That's their path in. But the Bengals that we talked about earlier need the Broncos and the Dolphins to lose, and then they need to win to make the playoffs. So the order is the Broncos, then the Dolphins, then the Bengals. All right.
Let's talk about the next matchup, Jeff. It's the divisional showdown between the Packers and the Minnesota Vikings. I went Green Bay in this one. You went Minnesota in this one. It was a nail biter at the end, a 27-25 Vikings victory. You got the win, but man, was it close to being an overtime game. Minnesota couldn't hold off the fourth quarter comeback from Green Bay. Jordan Love, with 2 minutes and 20 seconds left, got a touchdown. They went for a 2-point conversion earlier and missed it. I feel like they should have gone. Well, I guess that last one wasn't quite it, but they couldn't get the onside kick. Awfully close, Jeff. Awfully close. And it may not be the last time they play each other again this year. They may face off in the playoffs at some point.
They may. But Darnold was the only big fantasy starter in this matchup. So Jefferson, I think, had 100 yards, but no touchdown. I think Addison might have had a touchdown, but nothing crazy from the fantasy players in this matchup. Packers can't seem to decide who they want to target and feature, which goes to what the coach said to begin the year. We have 4 number ones. But Alex,
and you laughed at me when I said that they were going to do that they were going to split everybody up. You're like, you have Jaden Reed. He's obviously the number one, and they haven't used him the last 7 weeks plus.
I mean, he has an 8-point and a 9-point game, but I hear what you're saying. He's wide receiver 25 on the year now, which is hysterical because he was a wide receiver 1 for so long, and then bam! Back down to the floor.
Yeah,
so
he was like a top 8 wide receiver for the first third of the year, I feel like.
He'll be an interesting draft candidate next year when we switch over to next year. I'm sure some people have him as high as round 3, and I'm sure some people have him as low as like round 8 on their board. So that'll be an interesting candidate there. But this is your 3rd loss. I'm still sitting at 1 here, Alex. So with 2 games left, we're on to the Sunday night game. We both picked Washington over Atlanta. Washington ended up winning an overtime game. Daniels throws for 3 touchdowns and also rushes for 127 yards. And Mr. Bijan Robinson had a big game as well. But this solidified the Commanders. This matchup right here solidified the Commanders and the Rams making the playoffs. So as soon as the Commanders won, the Rams were in and the Commanders were in. Now the Falcons don't control their destiny in week 18. They need a Buccaneers loss and a win to make the postseason, which we thought that they were the favorites going into this year. So they are not sitting in a good spot.
Well, the the Falcons defense got 5 sacks on Jaden Daniels and forced an interception as well. So they definitely tried, and I think that the Falcons could have won this game. At the end of the game, if they actually used any of their timeouts, I think that they could have won that game, and that is on head coach Raheem Morris for not having good time management. This team should have maybe 2 more wins than it has right now. I think the Commanders, on the other hand, have had excellent coaching and excellent performances from their rookie quarterback, Jaden Daniels, who's probably rookie of the year now. I don't think anyone can catch him anymore. So the opposite. I feel like they've had a couple extra wins that they probably shouldn't have had, but coaching and good gameplay and also a little bit of luck have vaulted them pretty high, and they might finish with 12 wins, which is way higher than most people would have given them credit for preseason. Atlanta is just about where I predicted them either way, and they can still make the playoffs. And the switch to Michael Penix was the right one, so they at least got that right. Maybe it should have been a couple weeks earlier and he would have been further along by now, but he is now better than what Kirk Cousins was giving them either way. And Bijan looks better than beginning of the season. I like seeing Drake London get involved. Kyle Pitts got a touchdown. So things are moving in the right direction. They had this one and the head coach let them down.
So Daniels, this is a really good baseline for him. I'm optimistic about his future. Especially as he gets other weapons around him. I think that this is just as successful as CJ Stroud's first year. And I would say the only feather in Daniel's cap is he didn't have a Nico Collins to throw to. Terry McLaurin was the best that he had, and I don't even think you would put Terry McLaurin and Nico Collins in the same group. But imagine if Daniels here gets a true number 1 wide receiver. T. Higgins, let's go. You're up. He does need someone that he could throw downfield to, though, because McLaurin is aging, too.
McLaurin is the downfield threat. I think he needs like a power slot person to go across the middle of the field.
What's Anquan Bolden up to?
I haven't heard from him in a while.
Seriously, I mean, Bolden is like the true slot power guy that I picture every time when someone says that. But McLaurin will be 30 in September, and I know that you get very iffy with receivers after 29 years of age. So
it's more like after 30. So once they hit like 31, it's running backs at 29.
But you would agree that you can't wait to replace him until he gets to that point. You have to start drafting and developing a suitable replacement or signing a suitable replacement now.
I mean, they just need to bring in talent in general. They just don't have enough. And
I agree.
You're getting someone with a ginormous biblical name like Zacharias. Like, he shouldn't be the number 2 guy. Like, whatever. Zachamigus, whatever. Can never say his name. But I think that they could be in for a low first round wide receiver like Ohio State's Amika. I think he could be a really good receiver for them because he would be that power slot. Really good route runner, can go across the middle. So I would like to see them go in that direction. Amika Amugba, whatever. Amika,
you have a little while to learn how to pronounce people's names correctly.
Mm-hmm.
You got to hear Mel Kiper say it a few times.
There you go.
But anything else on this matchup, Alec?
Nope, I think that's it for me.
Monday Night Football, Lions at the Niners. The Lions get a win, but it was a very close matchup, 40-34. Jahmyr Gibbs gets 18 carries, has a touchdown in this matchup, which I do have some concern about him being able to handle a full workload next week off of 6 days rest, but they can worry about that on Sunday night. But Alex, this is where you get to get some more flowers here. Ricky Pearsall has his coming out party in a big way on Monday Night Football. And I think that he needs to be drafted, and I think that he needs to be drafted a little bit earlier than his ADP will be next year. So he might be one of those steals that you could get. I hope his week 18 performance isn't as good as his week 17 performance, because that will depress his ADP a little bit. But once you see in primetime what he can do, it's hard to unsee it. But we both picked Detroit, so that means I had a 15-1 week and you had a 13-3 week, Alex. So we are tied for the season at 169 wins, and that is pretty insane. That this late we are tied.
It means we both should be better.
We should. This is one of my highest winning percentages years ever with fantasy and with picks. So
it's one of my lowest.
I bring you down and you bring me up. So
there you go. Yep. All right. Well, I would still like to see Debo do more with this offense, but I am like about ready to jump off the Debo train because he fooled me. He had one good year like right after I was about off last time. Then he does this year when he should get a lot more. George Kittle seems offense proof. No matter what's going on with this offense, I feel like George Kittle's been pretty good. I like to see Ricky Pearsall doing well. Now, I don't know how it's going to work out with Ayuk next year, but they played in college together, so I think that they'll be okay. I think Debo is probably not long for this team, and they could clear up some cap by moving on from him.
And they'll have to. I mean, Kittle is the best tight end in football right now, so I mean, can't move on from him. So Debo makes the most sense to move on from. All right. Are you ready to switch over to week 18 with some quick picks here and some little tidbits? There shouldn't be any fantasy leagues still going. So if you play in week 18, stop it right now.
Never again. Never
Daily
again.
fantasy is different.
Yeah, that's
Daily
true.
fantasy's fun, especially when you have backups in and stuff, because you get to mix and match with salary caps.
Tanner McKee over under 200 yards.
Oh, that's not a bad fantasy start or a bad daily start. All right, so our first matchup, we have 2 Saturday games here. The Browns at the Ravens, and you have to remember the Ravens haven't played since the Wednesday before, so they've had a mini bye week here. Who are you taking in this matchup, Alex?
The Ravens benching starters because I don't think they have anything to play for.
So if the Ravens lose and the Steelers win, the Steelers are division winners.
Okay.
So that's why they are playing first.
Okay.
And I'm running it through the playoff machine just to make sure that I'm right on that. Yep. So they'll, just with that, they'll move up to the 3rd seed.
Right. So I would assume that they're going to play the starters until they have a good enough lead and then bench them. So I'm going to go Ravens.
Me too. Derrick Henry is a certain amount of yards away from a bonus too, and teams typically, especially with superstars, like to get their players those bonuses. Right. So I'm also taking the Ravens in that matchup, and we can hop over to the counterpart of the division, and it's the Bengals at the Steelers. Now, my question here is, will the Steelers play their starters if the Ravens win early? My answer to that would be no. I think Tomlin would rest Russell Wilson, George Pickens. I think George Pickens could use another week to get fully healthy. So we'll see there. But in this particular matchup, the Bengals have more to play for. If the Ravens win the first matchup, they have the deadlier offense. So I'm going to go the Bengals in this matchup.
If I was the Steelers, if the Ravens win, I would consider intentionally losing so I could face the Texans week 1. Whatever gets you to the 5th seed so you face the Texans. That's what I would do.
But didn't you tell me if the Chargers win, they'll bump down to the 6th seed?
That's true. So they might have to play their starters regardless. Because I would definitely want to play the Texans.
Me too.
I'm going Cincinnati, though. I think Cincinnati's trying everything they can to make the playoffs at the last second.
It would be pretty impressive if they did, considering their start.
You know, when you're driving on a very heavy traffic highway and everyone is bumper to bumper traffic and you see someone come zipping along the left lane and last second for an exit cuts off the people who have been patiently waiting in line, I feel like that's Cincinnati right now. They're about to just cut in the last second, potentially make the playoffs.
Well, the best thing about it is if Cincinnati wins, Sunday's matchups become that much more important when it comes to the to the Broncos matchup and the Dolphins matchup.
Yeah.
And they play at the same time, so they'll be scoreboard watching and playing. That's always that's the most fun for me.
Could you imagine if it was the Dolphins versus Denver? Like, that would be even more incredible because it would 100% count.
It would never happen, though, because only divisional matchups the last week. But
Yeah.
yes, absolutely. And we'll get to the last game of the year, which is a divisional matchup for the number 1 seed. So we have that. But first, we have the Bills at the Patriots. And as I said, the Bills are projected to rest the starters after the first series. Alex, do you believe the Patriots have what it takes to beat the Bills' backups, or do you think the Bills will win?
I think there's a good chance the Bills' backups still win. I think that they could get ahead enough to still win. I don't trust Gerard Mayo as a coach to put the Patriots in a position to win this game. As much as I would love Drake May to get a win, I think they're better off losing as well. So I'm going Buffalo still.
Yeah, I'm going Buffalo too. I expect them to have a 7-0 lead before Josh Allen exits the game. So that might
Maybe
be
this
enough.
might be a Ray Davis game finally.
He's showing some flashes when he gets time. So it'll be interesting to see him get the full carry here. Next up is the Panthers in their season finale versus the Falcons, who are fighting for a playoff spot. Alex, I have to go the Falcons in this matchup. I think the Panthers drop another close one here, which will gives them some momentum for next year. I think Bryce Young does look good in this matchup, but I think the Falcons have a lot more to play for in this, and I think Raheem Morris is coaching for his job right now because they were favorites. If they don't make the playoffs here with no major injuries, I think that he's on the hot seat already in year 1 because that's unacceptable from your what you had the standard at, and then to fall that far below standard is kind of crazy. But give me the Falcons in this matchup. Alex, who are you taking?
I would give major kudos to the Panthers if they upset the Falcons and kept them out of the playoffs. So that would be kind of cool for them. And I do think the Panthers will be competitive. They were competitive for at least a quarter in the last game, too. And the Panthers don't have much to work with. So the fact that they're doing as well as they are with how little talent is around that team is pretty good. Atlanta has to win this one. I mean, if they don't win this one, I agree. Raheem Morris should be on the chopping block. And I know that's hard to say when they have at least 8 wins, but this is a team that should have had 10 or 11.
All right. Our next matchup here, and I'm going to let you take it. It's the Bears at the Packers. How much will the Packers play their starters this week? I don't really think that they can move too much in the postseason seeding. They're already locked in to, I believe, the 6th seed. What do you have on this one, Alex? No, they're tied with Washington for the 6th seed right now. So if they win and Washington loses.
I had initially put the Bears for this one, but I saw what you saw that they could potentially still move. So I'm going Packers. I think they'll do enough to get the win and then rest their guys towards the end.
I mean, even I think Malik Willis could beat
Yeah, that's
the
another
Bears.
thing. Malik Willis had early success. I think, yeah, I agree.
And I think that ownership of the Bears transferred from Aaron Rodgers to Jordan Love. So those ownership shares.
It's just the Packers in general. Packers have been probably the most stable organization ever because coach to coach, quarterback to quarterback, they still stay successful. Whereas other teams, as soon as like a GM's gone or a coach is gone or a quarterback's gone, they completely crumble.
Agreed. Right. Here comes a big one. The Texans at the Titans. And I'll take this one first, Alex, because I'm rotating with you on purpose on this one and making sure that we rotate because we are tied going to this last week. But this is going to be my first upset of the week. Go ahead and give me the Titans in this matchup.
I don't know what to do with this one because the Texans should absolutely bench everyone, and they probably should lose based off of that, but it seems like they're going to play some guys. I still think Tennessee is doing themselves a disservice by winning in a meaningless game. I'm still going to go Houston in this one. If they lose, they lose, and it doesn't mean anything at all.
I know. It stinks if they lose, though, and if they try hard. I would like to see it. The only thing I'll say that I can see is I would want the Deontay Johnson and CJ Stroud to work towards the same page. So we'll see what happens there. All right. You're up first in the other NFC or AFC South matchup in the Jaguars at the Colts.
Man, I felt good about it before, and now I'm kind of like hedging back and forth. I'm still going to go Colts. I think Colts have the better roster right now. They're still going to be starting Flacco. Neither team has anything to play for. Although if Colts are trying to trade up for a quarterback, they might intentionally tank. And there's a lot coming out that the locker room is not happy, and it's a kind of a cesspool right now in Indianapolis. So I still think, despite that, they should win. If not, I think Shane should get fired.
And I'm going to go Jacksonville in this matchup. I think Brian Thomas Jr., the two running backs, Mac Jones, and there's still a potential that Anthony Richardson plays in the finale. But they don't have playoffs on the line anymore. They put it right down the tube against the Giants last week. And I don't know if you remember, but the 49ers played so flat the day after that they lost any hope of the playoffs. And I wonder if the Colts play very flat this upcoming week as well.
This is just two not good teams playing each other. So
Exactly. But that makes you happy because you guys should win the division for the next 100 years with these teams.
yeah, we'll see. Maybe if they hire someone better than Bobby Slowick, improve the offensive line, add more weapons, add a backup running back. We'll see.
So this next matchup, the Saints at the Buccaneers, I don't need to take any time at all. I'm going to go the Buccaneers in this matchup, and the Buccaneers will wrap up the division. Also, if you're doing prop bets, I believe Mike Evans will get his 1,000 yards, which is he's 85 yards away. So, depending on what the over-unders on some websites are, I would definitely do over 85 yards for him.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going Tampa Bay in this one. The Saints are just a miserably bad team at this moment, so kind of hard to root against Tampa Bay.
But the Bucs have a lot to play for in this matchup, so man, they could slam the Saints 50-0 in this one. But I could see them getting up by 4 touchdowns and just benching their starters too. All right.
The next matchup, we have the Giants at the Eagles. Eagles are likely resting most of their starters, especially Barkley. So it's unfortunate he doesn't get to run all over the Giants and break a record. He misses both opportunities. Despite that, I still think the Eagles' backups are better than the Giants' starters. So I am still going to go the Eagles in this one at home. I would be very curious to see how Tanner McKee does in this matchup. Jeff, who do you have?
Oh boy. So the Eagles like to stick it to the Giants. I mean, that was one of the reasons why they brought on Barkley. What better way to stick it to the Giants than ruin their draft pick compensation for 2025 by letting the Giants get a win in this matchup? I'm going to go the Giants in this matchup, and I think that makes is it 3 differences now?
Yeah.
I told you I was picking upsets. Also, Philly has a record of messing with draft order. I don't know if you remember the last coach, he benched players to mess with the draft order. So he's the only one that I've actually heard. He got fired right after that, which totally proved my point. Like, tanking doesn't exist because you might still lose your job and it doesn't matter. All right. We could hop over to the other NFC East matchup, and it's the Commanders at the Cowboys. And I think this matchup is early as well, 1 o'clock, so they're not going to know if Green Bay has won or lost yet. So I believe the Commanders cannot rest their players until there's some sort of result on that, because I don't think they want to play the Eagles, who are going to be the number 2 seed. So, although that would be a very, very, very fun matchup, I originally had picked the Cowboys in this matchup, but I'm going to switch my pick to the Commanders based on the fact that they cannot rest starters.
I'm also going Commanders because I don't believe in the Cowboys at all. So
that's fair.
So Yeah, I think even the Commanders' backups would beat the Cowboys at this point. So I'm going Commanders.
All right. So you're on deck here. The Chiefs are going to rest the starters at the Broncos. The Broncos need to win to get in. Who are you taking in this matchup? Are you picking Carson Wentz or the Broncos?
I'm going Denver Broncos. I know you desperately want to go Carson Wentz. So go ahead and do it.
I would love for Carson Wentz to show up big in this one, but I also have to go the Broncos in this matchup. All right, other AFC West matchup, it's the Chargers at the Raiders. Chargers, I mean, you had enlightened me that if the Steelers lose and the Chargers win, they move up a spot. So I believe the Chargers will give it their all and win this matchup. This is another one that I'm changing, that I had the Raiders initially winning, but I didn't realize that the Chargers had something to play for.
Yeah, I initially had the Raiders winning as well, but I'm going the Chargers because who wouldn't want to face the Texans?
And I think J.K. Dobbins is 58 rushing yards away from a bonus, and I think they're going to try to get him to that spot. 900 rushing yards, I believe, is his bonuses kick in. So
This might be a week that gets the Raiders back in the number one conversation again.
But to your point, the Raiders always play division foes, like the Chiefs and the Broncos and the Chargers, very closely. So I don't expect this to be a blowout.
It probably won't be a blowout. At least not start out that way. Could finish that way, but won't start out that way.
All right. So we have the Dolphins at the Jets on deck. If the Broncos lose and the Dolphins win, they're in the playoffs. With that being said, it looks like Tyler Huntley is starting for his third straight week. Alex, who are you taking in this matchup?
Oh, this is probably the narrowest margin of victory for any team right now because I think this is truly a 50-50. But I'm going to go Dolphins because I think the Dolphins, with Tyler Huntley having more to play, I think that they will take it to the Jets. And I think this could be a week where the Jets bench Aaron Rodgers and start the backup quarterback. So very curious how this turns out. Ultimately, it may be a nothing burger because Dolphins could already be eliminated by this point.
All right. I am going to go the Jets in this matchup, and I believe Aaron Rodgers is going to stick it to the Jets and the Dolphins at the same time.
I don't know how you can do that, but I think this is going to be the final straw game for Woody Johnson. I think he's going to pull the plug on Aaron Rodgers. I think Dolphins.
So you
win
think
this
there's
one.
no shot that Rodgers pulls out magic for what could be his last game?
I don't even think they're going to play him. Honestly, I think they're going to play the backup.
Tyrod? What's
Why
the
would you
point?
pay, why would you play your 40-year-old quarterback that you owe a lot of money to in a meaningless game and one that just threw 2 interceptions when Tyrod had 2 touchdowns last week? When the owner reportedly already wanted to switch to Tyrod earlier on in the season. So,
Really?
in my opinion, I think Tyrod's coming in.
You know, I would love to see Jordan Travis get the start.
I don't know if he's ready yet.
I don't
So
know
we'll
either.
see.
But I would love for him to get the start, because if you think about it, that could be their quarterback of the future, and we don't know that because we haven't seen him yet. Okay. So, I was just looking up his injury status, and he's still on the NFI list. Not on track to play in 2024. Darn it. I've been itching to watch him play, though, on this team. All right, Alex, it's my turn next, and it's the Seahawks at the Rams. The Rams are going to rest starters, so I do believe the Seahawks will win this matchup. Meaningless to the Seahawks, though.
I think that this is kind of a tough one to predict, but I do agree with you that it's most likely going to be the Seahawks winning this one and missing the playoffs with a 10-7 record. So
I
give
had them
me
having
the
a good
Seahawks.
record this year. I had them in the playoffs, though, but I know
Yeah,
you're a little down on Geno, but 10-7 is no joke in the NFL.
yeah, it's just how they got that 10-7. It's like the Chiefs kind of where they Chiefs are 15-1. Yet they looked terrible being 15-1. I don't think that the Seahawks have played as good as they should be, and I think a lot of that is on the new coaching staff and Gino, because I think this is basically the Seahawks have looked almost the same in the past 3 years, but 3 years ago Gino had a really good showing, and this time he doesn't.
Awesome. Yeah, man, I agree, but I think there's a skill with the Chiefs of winning close games because you're not
I
going to
don't
have
think it's a skill. I just think they're scraping
You're not going to
every week.
have shootouts every week. The Patriots made it a habit to win all the close games. You're not going to have blowouts every week. This isn't college. So it's a skill to win close games. And the fact that they went 15-1 and had so many close games, I don't think that's an accident. They can't boat race everyone right now.
They absolutely can. They have the firepower to do that.
Who?
It's just something the Chiefs.
Who?
Or
Hollywood Brown just
Kittle.
came back. So he played his very first game.
I know, but they're still not putting up big numbers.
Did you say Kittle?
Sorry, Kelsey.
You traded Kittle for Kelsey. Got Kittle on the mind.
It's a K tight end. That's all you need.
I'm surprised you haven't named one of your team names Kittle and Bit.
Not funny enough.
Oh, but Youth Movement was? Right. 49ers at the Cardinals. Alex, you want to take this one first? Because I'll take the Vikings at the Lions.
You're like, I'm gonna pick whichever one Alex doesn't pick. So
No, I already know who I'm picking in this matchup.
I'm going Cardinals in this one. Neither team really has anything to play for. Cardinals are at home. Cardinals also have the rushing quarterback as well. So Cardinals will go 8-9 with the win. 49ers 6-11 with the loss. Otherwise, they'll have a tie record if it goes the other way.
Yeah, I can't see the 49ers going 6-11 after losing the Super Bowl last year. So give me the 49ers just for that reason this year. And there's not a dramatic step down from Purdy to Dobbs, in my opinion, especially in Dobbs' first start.
These teams to me are on the exact same level.
Mm-hmm.
They're both 1-4 the last 5 games. It's really a coin flip, and it really doesn't matter either way. But if you had to pick, I'd go with the Cardinals because they're at home.
But you failed to mention the biggest part of this matchup. This is a Joshua Dobbs revenge game. Was he not on the Cardinals last year and started over Clayton Tune?
Yeah, he was.
Dobbs is going to want to roll them.
No, Dobbs is too nice. He's too nice of a guy.
Humanitarian, as far as I know. But Sunday night football. So football is only Saturday and Sunday this week, folks. Very nice to have it condensed. But Vikings at Lions, the number 1 seed in NFC is on the line here. Whatever team wins is the 1 seed. Whatever team loses is the 5 seed. That's crazy. That's stakes. I think the Lions made a fatal error last week playing their starters. I think they could have used the week rest. Dan Campbell is very hard on his players. And for that reason, I'm going to take the Vikings in this matchup.
I'm going Lions. To me, they're the better team.
They have better receivers.
I mean, Jameson Williams and Amon-Ra St. Brown? Come on, man. That's
Addison and
equal.
Jefferson?
It's like at least equal.
I know, but you're sitting over here saying better roster.
Well, I mean, the running backs. I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs is better than Aaron Jones, right?
I mean, Aaron Jones is better than Josh Jacobs, though. I mean, that was your stance going into this year, the number 5 fantasy running back.
Josh Jacobs let them down, fumbled the ball, and the Green Bay lost. So, I mean, you tell me. One had Aaron Jones and won, and one had Josh Jacobs and lost. What's the common denominator? As far as this matchup, though, I just think the Lions are a better team, and I think the Vikings have a better defense, but Goff has been pretty good against this kind of defense, and they're at home. They want the number 2 seed really badly. They're going to play aggressively.
This is for the number 1. This is not for the number 2. This is for the bye next week.
Yeah, this is for the bye week. Yep. They're playing.
Yeah, it's crazy. Craziness. I'm going the over on every single stat in here. I'd go over on the quarterback touchdown. I think both teams are going to leave everything out on the field on this matchup, which leaves them whoever loses this matchup leaves them vulnerable for the following week because this matchup is so important. And this is like the very first playoff matchup. But I'm thinking 70 points at least in this game.
It could be, but
the Niners just put up 34 against the Lions, and I don't think they have as good a personnel as the Minnesota does right now. So, and the Lions put up 40. So I feel like that's very easily a 70-point game. But I don't think either one of them take their foot off the gas if they get a lead in this matchup. I think they both are just pedal to the metal this entire matchup. This matchup is going to be awesome for that reason, because how many matchups do you get in the regular season that are completely pedal to the metal? You got the Bengals and the Broncos last week, and you saw how that matchup turned out. That was a very good matchup on Saturday night. So this matchup is going to be game of the year. I'm calling it right now, game of the year. And the NFL made it the last game of the year. What a finale. What a finale.
Yep.
The script is in. But I think if the Vikings lose this matchup, they're very vulnerable for a Buccaneers matchup the following week. And I think the other way around, I think if the Lions lose, they're very vulnerable for a Buccaneers matchup the following week. So
between those, I think the Lions have more to fear from the Buccaneers than Minnesota does, in my opinion.
Yeah. But both of them will be exhausted.
All right. Well, that does it for another episode of the Never Too Early Fantasy Football Podcast. Thank you for downloading and listening to this episode. And please don't forget to like and subscribe. Please leave us a comment and share the show. Every little bit helps.
You can find us on all podcasting apps by searching N2E Fantasy and with our handle at N2E Fantasy on all social media platforms. Please join our community and give us a follow. Until next time, take care of yourselves, and remember, it's truly never too early for fantasy football. Thank you again.
Hi, everybody.
Bye.